Or tuning into the House.
Government that costs us too much, taxes too much, and delivers too little year after year. They are dumbfounded being told to tighten their belts and to sacrifice more after years of sacrifices, while the federal government adds another $78 billion to our debt this year alone. That works out to $5,400 more debt for each Canadian household. My constituents are the people who pay the bills of this government, as well as the bone-crushing debt on government spending. They work hard, follow the rules, and in return seek the dignity of keeping what they earn and the opportunity to build a financially secure life in safe communities. Households in my riding are not asking for more government bureaucrats to manage the economy. They're asking for a government that respects the value of a paycheck and spends our money wisely. They're crying out for change. When the Prime Minister entered office, he promised fiscal discipline. He promised a steady hand to make things better. Some of my constituents even believed Liberals would not be more of the same after the last federal election. Yet it is obvious from the budget those hopes have been dashed. The Liberals, under so-called new leadership, have nearly doubled the $42 billion deficit forecast by Justin Trudeau. We can now all see the new boss is just like the old boss, but even more expensive. Today's $78 billion deficit is the largest in Canadian history outside of war or the pandemic. It's the most expensive government. This is the most expensive government in history, and Canadians have never received less from it. Our nation is on the wrong path.
Okay, I hate to interrupt him, but OGGO is good to go.
Investment Agency. We're going to start with Ms. Blanchard. You have a 5-minute opening statement, and then there's no opening statement from PCO, so we'll go right to questions after that. Just quickly, colleagues, you will receive in your P9 a couple letters from our clerk is forwarding on. We will address it in the second part, or second hour of the committee. Just have a quick brief overview so you're partially briefed on it, and then we'll address it then. It is regarding just the contract request. We do have bells at 5:15 just before we end. As we get closer, we can decide if we want to have a UC to continue for the last 15 minutes or just rise when the bells go. I'm hoping it'll be just when the bells go.
So near the end of the committee,
we'll turn the floor over to Ms. Blanchard. Welcome to OGGO. The floor is yours for 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, for inviting me here today. I'm accompanied by Emilio Franco, who is the Executive Director at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. Mr. Chair, I would like to provide an overview of the Treasury Board's role with respect to the Defence Investment Agency, which is a new special operating agency within Public Services and Procurement Canada. First, let me briefly explain the role of Special Operating Agencies, or SOAs. These agencies are not a new concept. They include well-established organizations such as the Translation Bureau and the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. And today, more than a dozen special operating agencies are in place within the government.
Agencies, or SOAs, are not legally separate entities, but are established as distinct units within an existing federal department. Importantly, they are subject to the same rules and requirements that apply across the federal government. Sometimes SOAs will be granted particular authorities, policy exemptions, or delegations that allow them to operate with greater flexibility in order to more efficiently execute on their mandates. For example, the Canadian Coast Guard has the authority to enter into sole source contracts above normal limits to deal with emergency situations. The Defence Investment Agency is one of the government's newest SOAs. As announced by the Prime Minister in early October, its mandate is to consolidate and accelerate defence procurement processes while also tying procurement to domestic industrial benefits. The establishment of the DIA and the authorities granted to it build on previous efforts to streamline Treasury Board's involvement in defence procurement while focusing on the areas of highest risk and maintaining a strong oversight role. Since 2018, defence procurements have been subject to a risk-based approach, permitting low and more recently medium-risk defence procurements to proceed without seeking Treasury Board approval. Underpinning this approach is a rigorous and mature governance in which the Treasury Board Secretariat is involved, as well as strong due diligence. An evaluation undertaken in 2024 of the risk-based approach found that this approach effectively decreased procurement timelines without compromising the integrity of the process. The authorities granted to the Defence Investment Agency represent a further iteration of this approach. For high-risk defence procurements of any value, Treasury Board approval of a procurement and negotiating strategy will be sought in advance of proceeding with solicitation activities or negotiations, and barring deviations from the approved approach, the agency will have the authority to enter into contracts without returning to the Board. I should emphasize that this exceptional authority is specific to contracting. Other types of authorities, like project authorities or access to funds, will still require Treasury Board approval. To support transparency, this enhanced authority is publicly available on our website in the Directive on the Management of Procurement, as are all other exceptional limits. Mr. Chair, we've provided a copy of this enhanced procurement authority to committee members to assist with your study. On the topic of transparency, members will be interested to know that the Defence Investment Agency, like all departments and SOAs, is required to report publicly on whether its programs are achieving the intended results. This includes regular reporting, for example, through PSPC's Departmental Plan and Departmental Results Report. Further, its contracts will be subject to proactive disclosure, and its spending will be captured in the public accounts so that anyone interested can follow the plans, procurements, and spending of the agency. Monsieur le Président, le Conseil du Trésor.
Mr. Chair, the Treasury Board and its Secretariat will continue to play their roles in ensuring adequate control at the appropriate stage of the procurement process, while supporting the agency in its efforts to streamline defence procurement. We're now pleased to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Patzer for 6 minutes, please.
Mr. Mustache.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. Really appreciate it. Ms. Blanchard, I'm just wondering if you could just really quickly, what are the authorities given to the Defence Investment Agency that you just alluded to? If you could just quickly summarize that.
Sure. So they are specific to contracting. So I guess I should say first and foremost that the agency will have all of the authorities that are already in existence within PSPC, but a specific authority related to contracting and exceptional contracting limits. So as I mentioned, low and medium risk procurements, subject to the existing governance that is in place around this risk-based approach, can proceed without coming to Treasury Board. Treasury Board Secretariat is involved in the governance. But high-risk procurements would require Treasury Board approval of a procurement approach and strategy prior to engaging in the procurement process. And then, assuming that there are no deviations from that approach, they could proceed with the procurement process and the negotiations and ultimately to signing the contract without coming back to the Treasury Board for that particular authority.
Okay, if I can just jump in right there, then could you just quickly differentiate between like a medium risk and a high risk one?
Sure. There is an evaluation of risk process that is built into this risk-based approach, and I might turn to my colleague Emilio to define that. But it does take into account things like financial risks in terms of whether it's a developmental project or something that is being purchased outright, legal risks in terms of the approach of acquisition that is being proposed. So maybe I can turn to Emilio to elaborate on that.
Absolutely. So the risk-based approach follows a established methodology by Public Service and Procurement Canada. There are a number of questions that go into that risk assessment. As Dominic mentioned, looks at aspects like legal, financial, contract risk, political risk, communications risk, as well as complexity, looking into obviously buying ammunition versus buying submarines, different complexity, different risk levels. And so based on that assessment, based on the responses to those questions, there is a risk profile that is given to the procurement, and that determines what authorities are required to proceed.
Okay, as far as the $100 million threshold for it to go through DIA, who came up with the $100 million threshold?
Good question.
That was part of the authority that was requested.
Requested by who?
It was part of the Secretary of State's request.
Rappel au règlement. Son microphone.
Point of order, the microphone was unfortunately not sufficiently synchronized so that we can get the interpretation. It's not your fault, but thanks for letting me know. So I missed the first bit.
How far back did you miss?
20 secondes.
20 seconds.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Maybe to say that last bit again, who requested the $100 million threshold?
It was part of the Secretary of State's request.
Okay, thank you. And then is there any way that a high-risk item could fall into that sub-100 million category, or would that only be low and medium risk?
I think it's a really good question because we grapple often with whether dollar thresholds are a more appropriate measure, and I think where we've landed is that the dollar value doesn't always equate appropriately to level of risk, and so I think it would be rare to have a high-risk procurement that falls below $100 million, but I wouldn't state that as a matter of definitive fact.
So it was you guys that approved the framework agreement and the business plan then for the DIA?
Those were approved by Treasury Board.
Okay. Do you think you'd be able to produce the governing documents then for it?
Yeah, those documents belong to the department, but I'm happy to take the committee's interest back to colleagues at PSBC and the DIA.
Okay, and then you'll table them back with this committee if you could?
I can follow up with the committee, sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I would really appreciate that. I think I got time for maybe one or two more questions here. So just what is the government's definition of core defense needs? Do you know what that is?
I would only say that from my perspective, those are the needs that are defined by the Minister of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces. So I myself don't have a definition of core needs, but I would say that those are as defined by the forces.
Would it be inappropriate for the industry minister then to be commenting on what is defined as a defence need?
I think the Minister of Industry has a role in terms of, as does his department, in terms of dealing with the industry and the defence industrial base. I wouldn't have a view on whether it's appropriate or not for him to comment on what are core needs.
Okay, we were just hearing, because they're trying to get to 5% for the NATO requirements, right? There's 3.5%, which would be like committed heavily to military, but 1.5% that would kind of be like in parallel or kind of maybe alongside it, but not necessarily required. Are you concerned about that 1.5% and what may or may not fall into that 1.5%?
I think it is a really important area of discussion. So I think you're referring to sort of the dual use investments that would fall into that category. It's not an area of expertise of mine, but I would note that there are undoubtedly instances where one objective can serve both purposes.
Right. I noticed that the minister commented on climate change being possibly as part of the NATO commitments. Does that seem a little bit outside of the scope?
Yeah, again, I apologize. I'm not expert in what would meet the definition, but the NATO definition, of course, is something that all NATO parties will have to comply with.
Thanks very much. Mr. Gasparo, please.
Great. Thank you for your testimony and your service, all three of you. Thank you. So can you speak to why Canada chose to create a centralized defense organization?
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the objective is to streamline procurement processes, reduce some of the duplication, consolidate some of the parties that are involved in the defense procurement process with an objective of accelerating defense procurement. I think it's a broadly understood view that procurement processes are complex and can take a long time. And the dual objective would be to use those investments to support the domestic industry.
Great. And now I know that many of our allies, such as Australia, Germany, United Kingdom, France, all use a central defense organization like this. Was this part of the thought process? Looking at so was it part of the thought process? And then I guess a supplementary question to that is, are we learning best practices from some of these other organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I can say is that I can't speak to what factors were considered ultimately in the decision to go with a special operating agency, but I do know that in the defense procurement space, certainly there has been a lot of analysis done of what exists in other countries with a view to doing exactly what you've described, incorporating or integrating the lessons learned from those organizations into the approach taken here in Canada.
Great. Just drilling down a little bit on that, what specific efficiencies do you expect the Defense Investment Agency to deliver compared to the current procurement process, particularly with how projects require Treasury Board approval?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I think it speaks to the first point I was going to make, which is that the Treasury Board part of the defense procurement process is only one component. So I think the organization, as it is stood up and as it undertakes its mandate, is going to have to look at the entire process from start to finish, including definition of requirements, all the way through to ultimately accepting delivery of goods. I think the consolidation of authorities and accountabilities, so the organization is going to be drawing upon expertise that exists now in different organizations and bringing those organizations together. I think the approach is to have integrated teams managing each of the procurements that the organization undertakes. So I think there's going to be some efficiencies to be had in terms of how those are approached, given kind of the bringing together of those experts. And in terms of Treasury Board's role, as I've noted, we have and will continue to look at as they evolve. I mean, it's a very new organization, so there is a lot to be seen, but we will be continuing to work with them to see where they may need additional tools or flexibilities in order to achieve their mandate. The first, as I've noted, is tied to the contracting authority and the early approval in advance of engaging in those contracting procedures.
It's safe to assume, obviously, we're trying to learn the lessons from, past procurement models within the Treasury Board Secretariat and applying it to the Defense Investment Agency.
That's exactly right. And this is, as I stated in my comments, it's an extension of what I would say is kind of an ongoing, that's right. So not new to the Defense Investment Agency, but building on what we've seen or observed as successes and how we've approached this to date. And I would suggest, again, this is a new organization. There's probably more that we can do as a Secretariat to strike that balance.
Great. How much time do I have, Chair?
A minute and a half.
Okay. And can we drill down just a little bit? And I know you touched on some of this, but how will this agency simplify and modernize Canada's defense procurement?
I think so. Some of that remains to be seen. I mean, the organization was launched just at the beginning of October. They have a new CEO who's coming on board, who I'm sure will have views on how best to execute. I think the consolidation of expertise into the integrated teams that they have envisioned, I think will provide some efficiencies in terms of engagement with stakeholders, engagement with the domestic industry, which the objective is to support through this organization and this way of approaching procurement. So I think that there are some efficiencies there in perhaps compressing some timelines, accelerating some of the decision making that takes place in the defense procurement process.
Wonderful. Thank you. Did I nail it?
No, you left 18 seconds on the clock.
Sorry.
I'm afraid you'll have to
have to become even more efficient.
The standing orders are that you are to apologize and resign, Mr. Caspero. Madame Gaudreau, please, for 6 minutes.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I've already had answers to some of my questions, so thanks for being here. It's quite positive when we're talking about what is to come, what is supposed to happen, but I will pick up where my colleague left off. He referred to the UK, Australia, and some other allies where they have a centralized agency. And of course, with all due respect to the work you're doing, but we're talking about defense. So given the very specific and specialized issues at stake, why was it not within the Department of National Defense that this agency was set up? Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I cannot answer to why that decision was made, but I can only say that there's a lot of expertise within PSPC, even though it's not exactly the same model they copied from other countries. But I believe that there are some advantages to be had by adopting this approach and by lodging the agency within the PSPC. Well, because I was slightly worried. I mean, is it maybe a lack of confidence towards the armed forces? Because we keep talking about the way services are delivered and the benefits and supports available to our veterans. So we talk about expertise and competencies. You're saying that they have a sufficient level of expertise, but will they need new types of expertise? Because we're talking about 5%, and that is a huge target. I just want to underline that the Department of National Defense will continue to play a big role, a major role. They will define and outline what they need. So it wouldn't be true to say that they no longer have a role to play. They still have an important role to play. And we at the Treasury Board Secretariat are trying to figure out the ideal, optimal way in which the departments can continue working together. Coming back to expertise, yes, this will be a good question for the new CEO. But what we know is that they will draw on and rely on the existing expertise within the different departments, but once they get going, they might realize that they need additional capabilities or expertise.
Qui devait besoin, mais oui, c'est possible. Puis à ce moment.
I don't want to speculate, but it's hard to say if they need additional expertise. At that point, they can go and seek that kind of additional expertise. I still have time. Well, congratulations. You have great French skills. I'm doing my best to speak English myself. Now, let's talk about the capacity of Canadian industry to produce, maintain, deliver on time the goods. Where are we in that sense? That's a very good question, but I'm not an expert in that field. I would say that there is definitely expertise that we possess with the approach that's being proposed. Support will be provided to these companies so that they can better position themselves and be part of this exercise of getting to the 5% target. And my last question. Well, if we can, we will receive documentation, the governing documents, and I appreciate that, but maybe people are wondering, how does it all work? Who gives the orders, as it were? Who makes the decisions? Who's going to be accountable if it doesn't work out? The Secretary of State will play a leadership role with regard to the agency, and Mr. Guzman will be starting in his new position within a couple of weeks. And the defense procurement responsibility falls on PSPC, on the department. So that's about it. I don't know if you want to add something on that.
En français, mais qui donne les pouvoirs au ministre.
The Act gives certain authorities to the minister, and it also the working dynamics between the minister and the Secretary of State will be a question for them to figure out. I have 30 seconds left. Do you believe that the agency or the act of rather centralizing procurement will provide additional efficiencies? I would say that it's too early to call. Maybe we can come back and talk about this point. Thank you, Chair.
It's like an invite to come back. We'll now go to Ms. Block for 5-minute round.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us today. I just want to share a few facts because my questions are going to be around the salary and how that salary was derived. So here are some facts. Chief of the Defense Staff salary equals somewhere between $279,000 and $329,000. The Secretary of State Defense procurement salary is $284,500. The Defense Minister's salary is equal to $309,700. The Prime Minister of Canada's salary is equal to $419,600. And yet the CEO of the Defense Investment Agency, Mr. Guzman, who is a former Goldman Sachs colleague of the Prime Minister's, will have a salary of $679,000 plus bonuses. And when I look at the chart for the bonuses, it looks like he's going to get a maximum of 33% of a performance bonus, which would equal over $900,000. Can you tell us why he is being paid so much per year? And can you tell us why he's being paid so much, as this exceeds the compensation set for Crown Corporation CEOs as posted on the government's website?
Good question.
Mr. Chair, I'm from the Privy Council office, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm the Deputy Secretary responsible for appointments. So I will do my best to respond to your question. So in terms of the salaries that you quote, that's absolutely correct. For Mr. Guzman, it is not uncommon for us to bring people in from outside of the Government of Canada. It's a decision, the discretion rests with the Governor and Council to make decisions around the kind of leadership that's required for important organizations such as this one. We are responsible for working within the frameworks that the Governor and Council set to negotiate compensation for folks when they come in from outside. And as I mentioned, as you allude to, there is a framework in place, and we work within that framework, and the salary is consistent with the framework. As you suggest, there is also not only compensation, but performance pay associated with that. It's not a given that people are going to receive the top end, as you suggest. And I think, to my colleagues at Treasury Board's point, it will depend on the ability to achieve the objectives that the Minister and ultimately the Prime Minister have set for the CEO.
Thank you. It's my understanding that, according to the Order in Council, this appointment was made on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. Can you tell me, were there any other candidates considered for this position?
Mr. Chair, when we learned that the government was interested in setting up this organization, I did provide some ideas to my boss. The clerk of the Privy Council at the time was John Hannaford. So I couldn't get into the specifics of the individuals, obviously, to respect their privacy. But as far as I'm concerned, and from what I know from where I sit, we did have some names that we did suggest from our end.
Did your ideas include Mr. Guzman?
I wouldn't be in a position to give that kind of level of detail around personal information about the individual candidates that we suggested.
I'm just asking about Mr. Guzman. He was obviously the successful applicant, if in fact he was on a list. So, okay, thank you for that. In Budget 2025, there will be funding allocated to both PSPC to establish the DIA and set aside funding for the agency starting in 2026. And if we look at the budget that was tabled yesterday, if we look on page 199, it states that a new defense investment agency for the year 2026-2027 will receive $13 million in that year. Is that correct?
That would be.
I don't have the exact reference in front of me. I recall that it was in the order of $38 million over a period of 4 or 5 years. So yes, that would be to sustain the operations. I think the organization now is being sustained with some internal funding from PSPC.
So I guess my last comment will be $13 million 2026-27, possibly a salary and bonus of almost $1 million. So the CEO is taking 1/13 of the budget for the year 2026-2027. Thanks.
Thanks. We'll now go to Ms. Rochefort, please, for 5 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Just to drill down on some of the questions that have already been asked, and so just basically to understand the extent that the Treasury Board of Canada, your Secretariat, will be involved in supporting public services and Procurement Canada to develop the departmental result indicators and measurement standards related to this new organization.
Sure. So, Mr. Chair, I would say that as with all departments, those requirements will be the same for the Defence Investment Agency, and through PSPC's departmental reporting, they will be reflected there. Treasury Board does play a role in approval of the core responsibilities of departments. So should there be amendments to the framework required, those would come to Treasury Board or to the appropriate delegated authority in that regard. Is there anything that you wanted to add on that, Emilio?
Well, just that Treasury Board does have a policy on results, and like any department, the Public Service Procurement Canada and the Defence Investment Agency within it will have to establish its results for its programs, and those will be, as Dominic mentioned, reported through the DRRs.
Do you have examples of what these metrics would look like or could be?
I wouldn't be able to speculate. The department would be best positioned to speak to how it will assess its results and report them to Parliament and Canadians.
Thank you. Okay, then could you speak to the role that the Treasury Board will play in defining the legal and the policy framework for federal contracting and procurement for the new defense agency?
I can maybe start and turn to Emilio. So the legal framework and the policy framework now is the same as it is for all departments as it relates to procurement, with the exceptions that I've already noted in the case of contracting. So as and when they may need additional delegations or additional exemptions from policies, they could seek those from the board, and we would, as a secretariat, have to do some analysis on a case-by-case basis to see how we would advise on those. Emilio?
Absolutely. Always happy to talk about procurement. So I think just, again, important to emphasize that, again, this organization follows the same rules as everyone else, with the exceptions that we've highlighted. And that includes the laws, regulations, trade agreements, and Treasury Board policies around procurement. The department will also have, and I think it's important to emphasize, its own set of controls, systems, and processes around procurement that are going to be specific and unique to how they operate. That will be, in addition to those broader frameworks. And they'll also be required to have, as any organization, the controls in place, oversight, audit, financial controls, record keeping, like all these rules will apply to this organization, just like they do any organization. And of course, the Auditor General, the Procurement Ombudsman will continue to have a role in overseeing procurements conducted by any organization, including this one. And I think last and very important to me is transparency. So its procurements will continue to be published proactively on the Open Government portal.
Maybe just a quick question then to follow up on that matter of transparency. How will it safeguard then sensitive defense information in that context?
Absolutely. So is my microphone on? Procurements are, publication procurements are managed under the Access to Information Act. And so, of course, if there are sensitive aspects of a procurement that are not appropriate to be published, that information can be withheld. The general practice is that you still, publish as much as possible and only withhold the information that is sensitive.
Okay. Thank you for that information. That's all for me. Thank you.
I'll keep that in mind. Well, thank you very much. We'll now go to Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. We were talking about the Canadian industrial capacity, and I'm wondering, the Governor is talking about the national industrial defense capacity and involving Canadian companies in this, but this is a very complex environment in which to operate. Studies will be done, so it's all a bit complicated. In Quebec, Davy, I believe, asked for a loan from Investissement Québec to be able to work with the federal government. So the development bank or development agencies, will they support regional companies? I'm really concerned on that front. It's a very good question. I don't know if I have a good answer, but the programs and the departments and the organisms you refer to, yes, they all have a role in terms of supporting the industry. Usually, this role doesn't come into play at the level of the defense industry, as it were. But it is possible, I don't want to speculate, but maybe going forward they will have a more robust role to play, given that these are exceptional and ambitious times. I will ask my second question. There is a military programming legislation in France, and parliamentarians have transparency into these programs and predictability for the industry that is great for the economy. So my question is the following. When you're planning to consult the Parliament and at the same time talking to the industry, what will be your guiding principle? Because you will need to make choices, and we see what's going on in these times of crisis. So what can you tell us on that front? That is a very good question for the agency. So once they get going, I think they will be in a much better position to answer this question. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Jansen, please.
Yes, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to start a little simple. The old system, if I understand correctly, works like this. So you've got the Department of National Defence that decides what's needed. You've got the Procurement Canada that handles the contracting. Innovation and Science adds the gadgets and the tech requirements, and the Treasury Board signs off on the money. So there's 4 departments involved in every major defence purchase, correct?
At a minimum, yes.
Okay. And each one of them has their own mandate, approval process, and risk team, correct?
Yes, I think that's
okay. And you agree then that the system just wasn't really working, caused massive delays and cost overruns?
I think there are a number of reasons for cost overruns, but yes.
Okay. So the Prime Minister's solution was to add a 5th organization, the new Defence Investment Agency, to fix that process. Is that correct?
I would say that what's important is the way that this organization takes on some of the roles and responsibilities that had previously been undertaken by the ones that you mentioned.
Okay, so just so we're clear, none of the original 4 departments are being removed or losing their involvement in the process, correct?
I think that remains to be seen. This is early days for this organization. Certainly some of the capacities within those organizations
they're still
may
there.
Step back.
They're still
the organizations are still there, yes.
So we still have National Defence, Procurement, Innovation and Science, and the Treasury Board, plus the new agency who's sitting on top of them doing the big buys, over $100 million, is what I understand.
Yes, again,
okay.
There may be organizations within those departments that will be stood down or have smaller roles going forward, but they would still have a role, yes.
Okay, so and the person that was chosen to lead it, and for what seems to be close to a salary of $1 million, we shall see, if you include the bonuses, Mr. Guzman, comes from banking. So a career in finance, wealth management, capital markets, no background in government procurement, no military experience, from, as far as I could see, not even a cadet. Was he actually, Madam Donnellan, was he actually on your list?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned earlier, and in the Prime Minister's announcement, Mr. Guzman was chosen, as you referred to, because he has decades of experience in investment and finance, capital allocation.
Yeah, he's a banker. He's not at all. He's Carney's friend. That's exactly why he got chosen. But anyway, we're going to switch over to the Justice Committee. I'm getting bored of this committee, and to be honest, I was going to tune into Justice in the second hour anyway. So let's just go ahead.
To fix the problem. This is where Fraser and I disagree. Using the notwithstanding clause to overturn this ruling would not be overriding the Constitution. It would be overturning a bastardization of the plain meaning of the Charter. It would be telling the judge, 5 of them actually, that their job is not to bend the law to their own vision, it is to interpret the law as written. In the immediate term, the federal government should invoke the notwithstanding clause to put these 5 judges in their place. After that, Parliament should look to draft and pass legislation and guidance for the courts to restrict the use of reasonable hypotheticals. This valid tool of the court has seen rapidly escalating abuse over the last decade to the point that we arrive at this decision. Most importantly, Mr. Chair, in Canada's system, Parliament and not the courts are supreme. It's time for a government in Ottawa to act like that is the case to protect our nation's children. And I do want to highlight the comments by Minister of Justice Fraser. We don't intend to override the Constitution. The use of the notwithstanding clause, Section 33, is part of the Charter. There is no overriding here. So it's a interpretation that is not worthy of acceptance. Now, I do want to highlight, and I'm going to be wrapping this up very shortly, Mr. Chair, I'm going to highlight some of the language in the dissenting opinion. And I would note that 4 justices were part of the dissenting group that prepared this judgment, and that included the Chief Justice himself, Wagner. And he basically starts off by saying, our case law, meaning the Supreme Court of Canada's case law, is categorical. A mandatory minimum sentence does not necessarily violate Section 12 of the Charter. They say it as follows: the appeal should be allowed. It has not been shown that the minimum sentences provided for in Section 163.1 sub 4 and 4.1 of the Code constitute cruel and unusual punishment within the meaning of Section 12. The impunged provisions are constitutionally valid and operative. The censure of society and the law must be reflected consistently and rigorously in the sentences imposed on offenders who are guilty of sexual offenses against minors. Through the imposition of more severe sentences, the justice system expresses society's deep and rightful indignation. A fit and proportionate sentence is one that is consistent with the teachings of the Supreme Court's decision in Friesen, 2020 SCC 9, and that gives effect to Parliament's intention that sexual offences against children be punished more heavily. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For the benefit of witnesses, when a member makes a motion like this, we do have to suspend regular proceedings. I have no guarantee that we will get back to questioning till 5, so I do ask for your indulgence as we hear the motion. I recognize 3 of the Conservatives that had their hands up first, starting with Mr. Lawton, then Mr. Baber, and then Mr. Gill, followed by Ms. Latanzu.
I am
Run that clock.
Really gobsmacked, Mr. Chair, and quite disappointed that this Conservative motion is necessary. When this Supreme Court decision came down last week arguing that a mandatory minimum sentence for the possession and acquisition of child sexual abuse and exploitation material was cruel and unusual punishment, I thought this could be and would be a unifying moment for members of Parliament and parliamentarians of all stripes. I actually had a moment of hope that the Liberal government would do the right thing here, say, this is ridiculous. We are going to reintroduce the law at the first available opportunity and do so using the notwithstanding clause, a key part of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in this country to assert that Parliament, as the democratically elected body by Canadians, gets to have the final say on this and not an activist judge. And I'll speak to why, very briefly, the mandatory minimum is necessary in the first place. The two offenders that were at the center of this Supreme Court ruling had, each of them, hundreds of images of child sexual exploitation and abuse material, referred to in the decision as child pornography. One of them, 90% of the images were depicting young girls between the ages of 3 and 6 years old, some of which showing them being, quote, subjected to acts of penetration and sodomy committed by adults and minors. The other offender as well had hundreds of images and videos of children from 5 to 10, quote, being subjected to sexual abuse such as fellatio and vaginal and anal penetration by adults. Now, the judge at the trial stage gave the first offender the bare minimum, 90 days imprisonment to be served intermittently at his convenience, and 9 months of imprisonment. The second offender was given very similar, in fact, identical sentence there. Without a mandatory minimum, that sentence, which is already in and of itself offensively low, may have been even lower. That is why a mandatory minimum sentence is necessary. And that is why we are calling on this House to reintroduce this legislation with the notwithstanding clause. I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. And to my knowledge, there are no photos or videos of that. And I hope that that will end up being true. Child sexual exploitation and abuse material does not exist on a computer screen with the person who possesses it only. There are victims, hundreds of victims of this. There is a market for this. The government needs to send the strictest possible penalty, the strongest possible message in denouncing this. This should not be a partisan issue. This should be something that every member of this committee, Liberal, Bloc, and Conservative, can support, regardless of what the Minister of Justice has said on this, that we call on the House to do the right thing and protect children. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman, and then Amarjeet.
Thank you, Chair. This is not only about kids already abused, raped, and exploited in these pictures and videos. This is about more kids in the future who will be raped because the courts fail to punish these perverts enough and thereby deter future perverts. We got to go hard on this so we can kill this industry. I used to lecture on the Charter a bit, and I want to talk about the Charter here. What was the point of the notwithstanding clause? It was to prevent absurdity. Attorney General Jean Chrétien used the notwithstanding clause to seal the deal on the Charter. That's how it came about. And he specifically used an example for absurdity that the Supreme Court could come up with. It was a hypothetical. He said, well, for instance, what if the Supreme Court found that possession of child pornography was protected under the freedom of expression. That's the example he used. I think everyone in this room, even the Liberals, would agree that such finding would be absurd. Now, that's not the scenario we have, but it's close. Senneville pled guilty to possession and access to over 300 images of children, mostly girls between ages 3 and 6, being sexually exploited. Nod pled guilty to possession of more than 500 images and more than 250 videos, most of which were children between the ages of 5 and 10 years old, many being raped and sodomized. I'm disgusted by this, colleagues. Striking down the mandatory minimum sentence for each of the 2 counts is exactly the kind of absurdity that the notwithstanding clause was designed to prevent. And I say this as a lawyer in good standing in Ontario. This is crazy. This is precisely why Section 33 was inserted into the Charter. And I'm tired of the use of these hypotheticals every time that the court sees an argument of overbreadth. A first-year law student can come up with a hypothetical which would not make sense and render the law overbroad. You know what happens when there is a crazy scenario like the court considered to strike down the mandatory minimum sentence? There's common sense. The police don't charge. The crowns don't prosecute it. But these guys are monsters. And I'm proud of my colleagues, and I'm proud of the Leader of the Opposition for clearly saying that we're going to invoke the notwithstanding clause when we're in government to protect these children from these monsters, to prevent this absurdity that the Supreme Court has arrived at. But Attorney General Fraser is refusing to invoke the notwithstanding clause. He knows it's appropriate under the circumstances, but then he would have to be arguing against himself in court after the factum he submitted last month. So I ask my Liberal colleagues on this committee to do your jobs, to safeguard the law, to protect children. Call on this government to invoke the notwithstanding clause, to put these monsters who through their actions contribute to the rape and sodomy of children, to lock them up. Please do the right thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As my colleagues have mentioned, the decision by Supreme Court of Canada to remove mandatory minimum sentence for offences related to child sexual exploitation is absolutely disgusting. The court ruled that a minimum 1-year sentence for these offenders is, quote, cruel and unusual. But what is cruel and unusual are the horrific and damaging acts these offenders committing against children. Child sexual exploitation leaves deep and lasting psychological and emotional wounds that can shape the rest of their lives. As parliamentarians, we have the utmost duty to protect innocent Canadians, especially children. That is why this committee must call on Liberal government to invoke the notwithstanding clause to overturn the Supreme Court's disturbing decision and to reinstate mandatory minimum sentence for child sexual exploitation. The call to use the notwithstanding clause in this case is not a partisan idea. It is supported by leaders from across the political spectrum at both the federal and provincial levels, who agree that protecting children and not offenders must be our priority. With this level of support, this committee must do its part. We must pass this motion and urge the government to act, to make it clear that Canada will always defend our children. Canadians across the country are watching and waiting for Parliament to step up. We hope the government will not stand in the way of the majority of Canadians and will choose to defend our children and not those who exploit them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Madame Latanzio.
Mr. Chair, I want to be crystal clear from the onset. Every member of this committee shares the same goal, and that is protecting children from exploitation and ensuring that offenders face the toughest possible penalties. There is absolutely no ambiguity on that point. But we also have a duty to act responsibly. The notwithstanding clause is an extraordinary measure that overrides charter rights. It has never been used by a federal government, and it should not be used as a political reaction to a court decision, no matter how strongly we feel about the outcome. Our amendment, there's one amendment to Mr. Brock's motion. Make this motion stronger and more constructive, and I will circulate that to the clerk in a few minutes. The amendment keeps the focus exactly where it belongs, on protecting children without undermining the charter or the independence of our courts. We are calling on the government, this government, to bring forward legislation to strengthen protections against child sexual exploitation. That's the responsible path. Firm action rooted in evidence, respect for the Constitution, and an unwavering commitment to keep our children safe. Because let's be clear, child sexual exploitation is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Those who prey on children are the worst of the worst, and they deserve to face the full force of the law. Our government will always stand firm against those who harm any child. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will be sending over the amendment on the third paragraph of Mr. Brock's motion.
Did you want to move the motion? You got to read the motion, I believe.
I've got to read my amendment, and the amendment goes as.
And then you could distribute it, but read it out.
Chair, is my mic? Now it's off. It's off or it's on?
It's on now.
Okay. So the third paragraph will read as such. The committee call on the government to table legislation to address child sexual exploitation, reaffirming Parliament's unwavering commitment to protecting children and ensuring that offenders face the toughest sentences our justice system allows.
Mr. House, I thought I saw your hand up. But
I did, but I mean, I'll speak to Mr. Latanzio in a minute when it's tabled and people have a copy of it and you're ready.
I will send that to you now.
So I was going to ask for a brief recess so that we can review and consult. And I would like to be acknowledged as the first speaker to Ms. Latanzio's amendment.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll suspend briefly. You can talk, and let's figure this out, please.
Expediting, certainly in the amounts that are being talked about to achieve the 2% and ultimately a 5% target. The pace of procurement, I think, again, it's well understood, can in some cases take a really long time. And so this will be, as I noted, the objective or the driver in part for this organization is to ensure that it can expedite and accelerate the process with a view to achieving or meeting those international commitments, including the NATO target.
So when we talk about meeting those commitments, does the creation of the agency and the amount of money spent in creation of the agency count towards that obligation?
That's a good question. I don't know if Emilia knows the answer, but that may be one that we have to get back to you on.
I wouldn't be able to answer. I don't know the answer of whether or not this organization is being contributing to the 5%. I know that there is an exercise to assess Canada's contributions to its NATO targets, with organizations bringing forward the work that they do in support of defense. But I don't know specifically of this organization and how it contributes.
Thank you very much. And we'll just finish with Ms. Gaudreau for 2.5.
En fait, j'ai une question.
I have one question, but I do have a bit of a problem. I need to be reassured. How can we be sure that there won't be a doubling of efforts, because we're talking about hundreds of simultaneous decisions. Maybe previously I wasn't aware of this, but we have the DND, the Treasury Board, PSPC, and the Privy Council Office. So who is accountable if there's a failure? Thank you for the question. It will be the agency, and that is part of the reasoning for this effort. It's about consolidating different authorities so that there would be fewer decision points with regard to procurement that they will be asked to do. And the agency is new, so this will be something they will take care of, and they will try to avoid the duplication that exists at this point in time. Well, Mr. Chair, this is an opportunity because, well, unfortunately, we don't always get to do this, but I would really appreciate if we could follow the process, the governing documents, and maybe in 6 months' time you will have additional answers to our questions. We need to keep a close eye on this. This is the taxpayers' money, and so if we want to show people that this is possible, especially those who doubt, I think you should come back and we'll then ask you for additional information. Well, I think the PSPC and the agency will be really well positioned to answer your questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We're going to actually add a couple more interventions. We'll go to Mrs. Block and then back to Ms. Rochefort. Okay. Mrs. Block for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity, and we'll see if I can use up the 5 minutes. The government announced a new policy, the Buy Canada policy, applying to contracts given out by the federal government. How many Canadian suppliers are expected to replace suppliers from other nations with the Buy Canada directive in effect? Do you have any idea of the displacement that might take place?
I don't have the specific numbers in front of me. So the policy that was announced back in September, the specific details of how that will be implemented are being finalized. And so that will be the commitment in the announcement was by the end of November, so those should be forthcoming. I think what's important to highlight is right now the government does most of its business with Canadian suppliers. What the opportunity through the Buy Canadian policy and strategy will look at is how do we support inputs, materials, and the use of Canadian content in the procurements that we're conducting. So one of the announcements spoke to how we can support Canadian materials, so aluminum, steel, wood, in making sure that those are components of the things that we're buying. So we're buying from a Canadian company and looking at how that Canadian company can leverage inputs from Canada in the delivery of that work. So I think that's an important piece of that. The specific details will follow, but as I mentioned, I think the vast majority of our current contracts are with Canadian companies, and this is about how do we work with those Canadian companies to support more Canadian content and inputs.
Thank you very much. Just like the National Shipbuilding Strategy, which sought to ensure that all provinces would be able to participate in the supply chain of the shipbuilding initiative. Can you tell us how that might impact what we're seeing with the new Defence Investment Agency? For example, over the last couple of years, the committee has learned that oftentimes contracts are constructed in ways that favor particular companies and exclude others. Are you contemplating what the rules may need to look like for contracting through the Defence investment agency that would ensure that smaller companies perhaps continue to have the chance to seek those opportunities to procure with the Government of Canada?
So I think there's two aspects to this. I think first, important to highlight that National Defence remains responsible for setting its requirements. And so, it needs to determine what the technical capabilities and needs are of the forces, and those are articulated to the Defence Investment Agency to then determine the procurement. The Defence Investment Agency does have a mandate, that was one of its core objectives announced in its announcement, to work with the Canadian industry. And so I would expect that in those conversations, they're looking at how best can procurement support domestic industry, either through the prime contractors or through that broader supply chain. And that will be a factor, I expect, in how they determine their procurement approach, which should ultimately result in the broader supply chain across Canada being supported through these activities.
Thank you.
Mr. Gasparo, please.
Great, thank you. Can you get into a little bit how the primary objectives of the organization will contribute to Canada's GDP growth, and what multiplier effect is expected from defense-related industrial activity?
Thank you for the question. I don't have the metrics in terms of those targets. What I would say is that the intention is to use procurements in support of equipping the forces as a tool or a mechanism that can also support Canadian domestic industry. So I don't know the metrics. I think we've mentioned that they will have to establish their own targets, and those would be good questions to be placed to the DIA. But again, from the perspective of Treasury Board Secretariat, we're kind of only one component of what is a much bigger and larger procurement process chain, I would say.
Well, I think it's probably safe to assume that if you're streamlining waste, you're making it more efficient for large procurement in, I guess, as an offshoot of infrastructure development, that it will provide a positive impact to our gross domestic product. And so I'm assuming it's safe to assume it will be positive, in the fact that we've attracted talent to the agency to help drive that, I think, is something that should be viewed as positive.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
So how will the Defence Investment Agency, from your perspective, operationalize its goal to tie procurement to domestic industrial benefits? And then we can talk about some of the metrics maybe that we'll use in that regard.
Yeah, again, I think, and I might turn to Emilio. So there is an industrial technical benefits policy that already is in place. And so I think the way that the DIA is structured, I think, is going to be helpful as far as executing on some of the commitments and requirements. Did you want to add to that, Emilio?
I think you hit on it, but just to highlight that the ITB policy requires that defense procurements over a specific threshold look at the benefits that will be created within Canada by virtue of the work, and actually requires that suppliers that are subject to that policy for contracts, that for every dollar of contract value, there's a dollar of investment in Canada, whether that be direct industrial inputs, whether that be training programs, or other kind of spin-off benefits. The key commitment here is that every dollar we spend on the contract, there needs to be benefits generated for Canada in some form, and that becomes a commitment from the supplier and is tracked and managed throughout the life of the contract. And I think the DIA will play a key role. We've seen that the ISED personnel will be joining the DIA to support that delivery and execution of those benefits for Canada. And
you're comfortable that Canadian firms will benefit from these major defense contracts where appropriate?
I think that's one of the key objectives of the DIA. And so, it is intended to work with the Canadian industry to look at what the opportunities are and look how we can leverage and build our procurements in a manner that supports work for Canadians and for Canadian businesses. I think one of the things that we see with this approach is that Canadian companies have seen in the past challenges with booms and busts and short-term contracts that make it difficult to build capacity and
thanks, Megan, for the gifted.
I think the agency will be looking at what kind of contract approaches, more longer-term contracts, more contracts that allow for more sustained economic growth, and see what those opportunities are to drive both delivery of equipment for the forces and for our Canadian economy.
I'll yield the rest of my time to my colleague.
Is there another round?
No, 20 seconds.
Well, I'll just make a quick comment then. Just regarding the background for Mr. Guzman, I was noting as well that the mandate of the agency is not just purchasing, it's also to help Canadian companies, just to follow my colleagues here questioning, to help them scale up so that they can develop cutting-edge capabilities and compete globally. And I would say Mr. Guzman's background really fits that ability to be able to help Canadian companies. I would say in that sense, he's an excellent choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, that's it. Witnesses, thank you for being with us. Just very quickly, quick question for you. You mentioned that Mr. Guzman would be subject to the one-year cooling-off period. My understanding is that is the general rule unless overridden or excused by the Ethics Commissioner. Do you know if that has been the case for Mr. Guzman?
I'm not aware. I mean, we could certainly try to follow up for you, but usually that happens bilaterally between the commissioner and the reporting public office holder directly, so we don't often have that direct information.
Okay, if you have it, would you provide it?
For sure.
Positive or negative?
For sure, we can check and see what we have on our records.
Wonderful.
Okay.
And we will excuse you. We're going to suspend for a few moments to dismiss our witnesses and bring in Mr. Bedard.
I didn't think they were bringing in a witness for the second half. It just showed committee business. But anyway, while they're suspended, while Justice Committee is suspended, we'll tune into the House, I guess. We'll see what's going on here.
I understand that my colleague was previously a municipal councillor. So I wonder what he thinks of the fact that in the federal budget here, there are only $9 billion over 5 years in new money for infrastructure. And that within that, there's $5 billion for hospitals over 3 years from coast to coast. Even though building a university hospital, just one, costs more than $5 billion. For example, the one being built in Ottawa, Montreal is going to cost more. As a municipal councillor, would he have felt insulted to receive crumbs from the federal government like this?
Senator Marpole.
Again, thank you very much for that question. Well, I think that one of the biggest problems of this budget is that it has not addressed the problems that every Canadian facing right now. So they can promise a lot of things for the future, but there's done nothing for the real problems that Canadians are facing day in, day out. They can promise a hospital, but where are the doctors? Where are the medical staff? They could not even get this problem fixed. So they're just telling you another rosy picture so that you can forget what you're suffering right now. So this is deceptive.
Hear, hear. Questions and comments? The member for Newmarket Aurora.
I'd like to thank the member for his speech. Of course, if we go back a few months, we heard time and time again one of those slogans that the government used and the Prime Minister used was around spending less. And of course, now that we have the budget, we see that they're spending $141 billion more. The deficit is bigger than he promised. And we have a mounting amount of debt, $324 billion more. And of course, there's Canadians who voted and put their faith in the slogan of spending less, and that is not what is being reflected in this budget. Can he please speak to how his constituents may feel after seeing this budget?
The member for Richmond Centre, Marpole.
Thank you for that question. Well, I think this is the reality that Canadians are facing right now. When the government is building a bigger and bigger deficit, one day the deficit or the debt has to be repaid. So that's why tax is going to be bigger and bigger in the future. And as I mentioned, Canadians are already facing the fact that when you earn money, you pay tax. When you spend money, you have to pay tax. And even when you save money, you also have to pay tax. This is the reality of the deficit create. And tax is the daily experience of Canadians.
Resuming debate. La prise de débat, the honourable member for Northumberland Clark.
Thank you very much, and it's always an honor and privilege to rise in this House. And at the end of the day, I don't think there's a better quote that sums up this budget than the old Winston Churchill quote that he said that a country or a nation trying to tax itself in prosperity is akin to a man jumping into a bucket and then yanking on the handle and wondering why he didn't get pulled up. There's never once been a country in the entire history of humanity that has been able to tax itself into prosperity, and it won't start here. But I just wanted to start out with a little bit of fun, but I think it makes a point. And of course, the deficit was announced with $78 billion. So that can be hard for people to get their heads wrapped around. $78 billion is not a number that most people will come across. I mean, maybe if you work for Brookfield, you will, but the rest of us really won't have that opportunity. So to give you an idea of what you could do with $78 billion, you could buy over 7,000 private islands. You could buy over 700 Icon-class mega yachts. Those are the type that Jeff Bezos and other Brookfield type folks have. You could buy over 30,000 luxury homes in Beverly Hills. You could buy 100 of the top soccer clubs. You could buy about 15 or so NFL franchises. You could buy yourself 15,000 private jets. Not interested in those wealthy accoutrements? Well, we've got other ideas for you that maybe other people would be more interested in. You could fund the End the World program at the United Nations for 10 years. For 10 years, you could feed the hungry. Space exploration, maybe that's of interest to people. That's for $78 billion, you could fly 780 Artemis moon missions. Or maybe you're into clean energy. I think that's important, as I do. Well, you could install 1,500 gigawatt facilities. Healthcare, of course, is important to us all. So if we didn't have this deficit, we could build over 7,000 hospitals. That's 7,000, guys. Education, you could endow over 1,500 Harvards across this country with $78 billion. If you took, interesting, this one's fun. If you took $100 bills and you stacked them to reach $78 billion, you would be higher than the orbit for space. If you had gold, you would have 10% of all the gold ever mined in human history. That's 39 billion iPhones as well. That's enough to give everyone on the planet $10. That's a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. Let me just tell you, though, about what some of the experts have said as well. I just want to read a quote from you here. Here we go. So just one second here. My apologies. Okay. This is from Kim Moody. The ugly outweighs the good by a significant amount. The budget is a financial disaster. Our youth and future new Canadians will be left to pay off massive spending spree well past when the authors of this mess are gone. And to pay it off, there are really three paths: a significant tax increase to pay down the growing debt and increase debt charges, significant austerity, and/or both. In the end, this budget isn't a spaghetti western, it's a slow-motion fiscal shootout, where taxpayers are the one left holding the smoking gun. The good parts are minor cameos, and the bad dominates the middle, and the ugly rides off with the future saddled in debt. If this is what passes for generational investment, future generations may wish they had been written off the script. That is the reality of this budget. So we've had a little bit of fun to show you what the $78 billion, we've heard from some of the experts. The reality is that this is a scary, scary time for Canada. This budget will encumber our country with generational debt without any positive transformation or none to point to. 78 billion reasons why we should not vote for this budget. The budget the reality is where we are is coming off of 10 years of what we can call is fiscal malfeasance. This government has failed Canadians at every turn. We've had the worst economic growth since the Great Depression in the last 10 years. And how did we get here? Well, this government created a fiscal imbalance. Increasingly, they put more and more resources in the public sector while starving the private sector. The public sector is absolutely necessary, and it is important for our safety net, for healthcare, for equity. But at some point, you have to stop starving the private sector of resources. The private sector, ultimately, is where our productivity comes from. And it's not shocking, then, as this government increasingly reallocated resources from the private sector into the public sector, that we saw declining productivity. The OECD has us ranked as one of the worst performers with respect to productivity, and that's not because we don't. It's not because we don't have the best workers in the world. We do. Where the problem lies is both on innovation and on capital. We have been one of the worst countries over the last 10 years in terms of investment. An American worker, for example, will have twice to 3 times as much investment in the tools and the equipment that they are utilizing as opposed to a Canadian worker. And so the analogy I often use is if you've got 2 workers and they're competing to dig a hole, one has a shovel, the other one has a backhoe. The one that has a backhoe will win 100 times, no matter how hard the man or woman works digging that hole with a shovel. So we've seen an economy increasingly starved of capital. And so what is this government's response? We're going to suffocate the private sector yet more. We're going to suck more resources out of the private sector, out of the women and men who have the best ability to reallocate resources. Because ultimately, what happens is there's an allocation of resources. The way that capitalism works is it counts on millions of Canadians to make thousands of different decisions. Those individual decision points allow us to have a more efficient. What happens in Ottawa is there's an increasingly centralization of those funds. So we take the money from all those people who earned it, who are so brilliant at allocating those resources, and give them to bureaucrats unfortunately, in many cases, squander. As we've seen in the Green Slush Fund, we've seen in numerous scandals of money going out the door. We need to get more of those resources back to the individuals who actually earn them and are so careful with spending each and every dollar to maximize those resources as we go forward. And this government will say, well, we're actually spending less and spending more at the same time. Now, I mean, this is really a George Orwell
Oh, okay. Yeah, Justice is back. It just came back. I hate to interrupt him because he's on a roll, but let's watch the Justice Committee.
That Ms. Latanzio has presented. I will read them out loud in both languages, and you can confirm that that is the case in what has been presented to you by email, and then we can continue the debate on this motion, eventually vote on it, and if need be, vote on the main motion. So what Ms. Latanzio has moved in the third paragraph is to replace all the words on the last paragraph after 2 with the following: table legislation to address child sexual exploitation, reaffirming Parliament's unwavering commitment to protecting children and ensuring that offenders face the toughest sentences our justice system allows. Donc en français, que la motion soit amendée au dernier paragraphe.
And the last paragraph would be amended after the word government. Present legislation to fight against sexual exploitation of children and reaffirming the unflagging engagement of the government to protect children and have the toughest possible penalties against the offenders allowed by our legal system.
Amended motion, Mr. Housefather, and then Mr. Brock. Anthony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think on this one, there's a lot that we all agree on. That the okay.
Mr. Chair, I respect the spirit by which Ms. Latanzio sought an amendment. Unfortunately, it is not it's anywhere close to the spirit and the intent of our particular motion. In fact, it's a whole new motion. In our view, it is out of order and it's not admissible, and we'd be seeking a ruling from the chair accordingly.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
That's not a point of
Do you
order.
want to speak on your point of order?
Yes, it is. It's a point of order. That's a clear point of order.
Just give
She
me a
just
second
said it's
for your
not.
order.
Do you even know what a point of order is?
We'll continue on this motion while the clerk verifies whether it is admissible. All right, well, that's fine. But let's let Mr. Housefather finish.
I challenge your ruling, so this would not be in order for you to turn to Mr. Housefather. This requires a vote.
I haven't ruled on it yet,
You
so
did.
I would
You
have
did.
to suspend.
Well, you did
No,
by,
I took it under
by
advisement.
turning. Well,
That
I
isn't-
challenge that.
I don't, you can't.
What?
So what do you want to do? You want to vote on that, and then I can suspend and confer with the clerk and get back to you on that? Or we can continue while Mr. Housefather.
Let's suspend and confer with the clerk.
Okay, suspend.
Brock's literally telling him how to do his job. Like, listen, it's very simple. You either make a ruling that it's in order or it's not in order. And if you need the clerk to help you with that, okay, get the clerk's opinion and then make a ruling on what you think is appropriate or not. I don't think the motion, the amendment is speaking too much to the motion. I kind of agree where Brock's coming from. It's a totally separate motion. It kind of seems like Miller doesn't know what he's doing. He's like looking to Brock to figure out how to do his own job. Apparently Brock's the chair now. We'll tune back into the house while we wait.
But hospital staff says that this is a hospital centrist, centered on hospitals, but doesn't really deal with human beings in the healthcare system.
God, I don't really want to listen
But
to the
what
block. What's
contributes
going on
to
in OGGO?
fiscal imbalance, perhaps,
watch
is
OGGO
infrastructure.
instead.
There are people in Quebec who are saying that in various municipalities, and especially with climate change, this will have an impact on municipalities.
Yeah, we're just going to
and
watch
on
OGGO. I don't want to listen to the block. What's going on here?
To this committee, the rights of parliamentarians when a very clear motion is being not fulfilled by industry. And so I will now, I've ruled. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Bedard. We'll entertain point of order after Mr. Bedard speaks.
Point of order?
I missed what they were going on about in here.
Glad that Mr. Bedard is here. What I object to is not knowing,
Okay.
and I was
That's
not aware,
a point of
not
order,
informed.
but I appreciate you saying it's not known, but that's not a point of order. I've invited Mr. Bedard. I can do that as chair.
I challenge your ruling.
Okay. I'm not sure
To
what
not
you're ruling.
let-
What is that Mr. Bedard's presence?
No,
or my
absolutely
decision
not.
to invite him?
As I have said, I really appreciate Mr. Bedard being here. I challenge your inability to let members on this committee speak and to question you as to why committee members were not consulted and why they were not told up until 30 seconds before you struck the gavel as to what this meeting was going to be about today. So I challenge that, Chair. And that is a dilatory motion.
I'm not sure what you're actually challenging. What is the outcome that you hope to achieve with such a challenge? Mr. Bedard's dismissal, or my right as a
confused
chair
as well.
to
What
be
is-
able to
what is
call
she
witnesses?
challenging?
Is that a
Or
question
put-
to me, Chair? Because I would like to answer it. Thank you. My challenge and the point that I'm trying to make here is that whatever we do in this
Sorry,
committee...
let me interrupt for 2 seconds, and I'll give the floor back to you. What is my ruling that you're challenging?
To refuse to give me the floor, Chair.
It's not a ruling. We're not in. Sorry, sir. Okay. There's no, I guess, right for you to have the floor when I am in discussion with something. If you're trying to call a point of order, I've ruled against a point of order. You can welcome to challenge that point of order for me saying it's not a point of order. However, go ahead, ma'am.
The point I'm trying to make, Chair, is that I would really appreciate if we could work more collaboratively together to not get a, hey, by the way, this is what's happening at the bottom half of the meeting today, when you could have said the exact same thing. Look, I'm here to work with you, Chair. I'm here to work with all members on this committee to make sure that we are doing the work and the mandate of this committee. And it boggles my mind as to why we need to play these games, Chair. We can just have open conversations ahead of time.
I'm going to interrupt you right there, Madam Khalid. It's very offensive for you to claim that I'm playing games.
You accused me of the exact same thing just 2 minutes ago.
No, I did not state that you were playing games. I did
you
state that you were
read
going
the blues,
to.
Chair. Read the blues.
Okay. I'm now turning the floor over to Mr. Bedard. Go ahead, sir. Just regarding the letter from my legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. The chair asked me to be present to provide a briefing about parliamentary privilege, and in particular the power to send for records and papers. So I will present the privilege, and then.
Okay, let's switch back to the Justice Committee. We'll scroll back just a few minutes, just from when they came back from suspension, so we can hear what they are going on about.
After having conferred with the clerk, both motions do in fact deal in principle with the protection of children. So the motion is receivable, and so we can resume debate on the amendment.
Challenge.
So you just state what your challenge is.
Challenge your ruling that the Liberal amendment is in order.
Okay, then we will, barring any discussion on it, we will proceed to a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Brock's.
Is there no debate on the point as to whether or not it's within scope or not? Or are we just voting on the fact that
I ruled it within scope. Yeah. So he's challenging the ruling, James. Yeah, so the challenge is formally shall the chair's ruling be sustained for purposes of this vote. Mr. Maloney, since he's back, will vote, and Mr. Housefather will not. All those in favor say aye. In favor of shall the chair's motion be sustained?
Yes.
Why are you not going one by one?
Yes. All those against? Okay, so the motion does carry. We will resume debate on the amendment. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think this is an area where I think we would have a lot of agreement tout à travers le comité. I think
throughout the committee.
Two offenders who were appellants in this case were committed very, very bad crimes, and that they should have very, very strict sentences. And in fact, the Supreme Court's ruling didn't change the sentence of these two offenders, but I would argue that they were too lax, at least one of them. I think we would be able to agree that the minority ruling in this case, or the minority judgment of the four judges that said that the majority should have deferred more to Parliament were correct. But I think we can disagree with the Supreme Court's majority judgment without attacking the Supreme Court as an institution or attacking individual judges on the court and making claims about political motivation being involved in the judgment. What I do think we can work on together is sentencing guidelines. That is something the Justice Committee could focus on. Are the sentencing guidelines incorrect? Mm-hmm. We could talk about the use of hypotheticals, as Mr. Brock had raised, and whether or not Parliament should be clear about what hypotheticals should be or not be used in the context of such a case. Mm-hmm. And we certainly could go back, and I think we should go back, and legislate to deal with the court's ruling and to require mandatory minimums in the case of these child sexual offenses that deals with the hypothetical. All we need to do is create a class that excludes the hypothetical, that of the teen sexting that even Mr. Brock agreed he wouldn't have prosecuted. So I think it's a willy-nilly leap to go to the notwithstanding clause, which is something that Parliament has not done since the Charter first came into force. And it sounds like some of the people here would use the notwithstanding clause over and over and over again. And I don't think that's the work that Parliament should do. Parliament should do the work. We don't agree with the majority ruling of the court. We go back, we look at the judgment, and we legislate properly to ensure the strongest possible sentences, but we take into account of that this class was perhaps too wide, and we narrow the class slightly to remove this hypothetical. So anyways, I agree with Ms. Latenzio's position that we don't need to use the notwithstanding clause. We need to legislate and properly address the court's judgment. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Raven. It's
So I
not
have,
willy-nilly.
MP Brock, unless you want to cede your time to Mr.
It's a very specific
Mr.
reason
Lawton,
to use it.
and then Mr. Baber, and then Mr. Gill.
Our motion had very specific direction of a statement that this committee would send to the House, and ideally something that the House would concur with and the government would concur with, and that was that we call on the government to invoke the notwithstanding clause to reinstate mandatory minimum sentences for child sexual exploitation. Now, the amendment that we are debating now from Ms. Latenzio, from the Liberals, is an amendment that changes the call to action quite significantly, that we call on the government to table legislation to address child sexual exploitation. And the reason that is fundamentally different is because that is, with all due respect to Ms. Latenzio, that is not specific in terms of what we are calling for that will directly respond to and address the Supreme Court ruling that prompted this discussion. And I do go back to the comments I made in my initial intervention on Mr. Brock's motion, which is that the reason that mandatory minimum exists is for cases where, as in the cases that led to the Supreme Court decision, the trial judges give the bare minimum and even then find ways to go even below that for these heinous offenders who had hundreds of images and videos of young children being abused in unspeakable ways. So this amendment cannot be supported because the amendment allows the government to do something, to table some legislation that skirts around the edges of this issue without dealing with the crux of it and what we are trying to actually have an answer for, which is how do we ensure that judges do not have the ability to let people who have engaged in these horrific crimes slide and go without due sentencing. So, this is not something where I believe we can afford to be imprecise in what we're seeking to do. So I will be voting against this amendment. The amendment neutralizes and neuters the very essence of what we're trying to do, which is make a very strong, deliberate, and specific call to action from the government. And I still reiterate my hope that our original motion can be passed with all party support at this committee, because this is something where the health and lives of children can be materially improved by sending a strong message to child abusers, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Roman.
In response to Ms. Latenzio, this is not a political reaction that you're watching on this side. This is the responsible reaction. And I'd like to add that under the circumstances, and given the intent of the notwithstanding clause, if it is not to be used to uphold a mandatory minimum sentence against possession of child pornography, then there is no conceivable scenario that I could imagine where it would be appropriate for the Liberal government, or in fact anyone else, to use the notwithstanding clause. This is precisely, as I said in my initial remarks, the type of scenario that the founders, that the framers who agreed on the Charter have contemplated. And I ask again that we don't just think about the kids abused by Seneville and Nod. I ask that we create enough deterrence to prevent and save future kids and to kill this disgusting industry. I will be voting against the Liberal motion to amend.
Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that we agree that we want to stop child abusers no matter where they exist. We want our kids to be safe, our children to be safe. At the same token, I would like to say, Ms. Latenzio, amendment will not send a strong, specific message to these predators. These child abusers should realize that we are on the side of the children, not on their side. We have to protect our children from these abusers. And I will always say and always stand wherever I'll find a place where we can save our children. That's the right thing to do. This is what we need to do. The amendment that brought forward is not going to address the issue that we are talking today, so I will be voting against this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I'm moving a sub-amendment to the Liberal amendment. It is not in both official languages, but I'd like to read it out. That the amendment be amended by adding the words allows with the following, quote, provided that the government table its legislative response to this Supreme Court ruling before the end of 2025 and that this be reported to the House.
Just have Andrew make it. Have Andrew live. Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the sub-amendment to this. Do I need to read it again? Okay. The sub-amendment is as follows. That the amendment be amended by adding after the word allows with the following, provided that the government table its legislative response to this Supreme Court ruling before the end of 2025 and that this be reported to the House.
I move the motion.
Thank you.
Can we suspend?
We'll probably have bells in the interim, so we'll work through that.
They're about to
because
vote
we agreed
soon.
to resume to the extent possible as soon as 10 minutes after the vote concludes. We'll resume if that's the case. It will allow for the sub-amendment to be translated into French and properly distributed, so it's fortuitous. But let's wait for the bells to ring. And Ms. Lehans, do you have a question, or we will suspend otherwise?
We will suspend.
Yep, and we can chat amongst ourselves.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see what the House is up to. Dun, 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 dun. What are they doing? Oh, they are voting. Okay, there it is. There's the bells. Okay, vote call. So all the committees are going to suspend right now while we get to see the sub-amendment to this vote. This is the Conservative sub-amendment. I actually haven't seen what's in it, but we can already anticipate what's in it. Remove Bill C-69, remove the industrial carbon tax, reduce some of the budget, just typical stuff that Conservatives would ask for in a budget. And this is the sub-amendment to the Bloc's amendment, where the Bloc wants more transfers. Basically, Bloc just asked for more money. So the budget got tabled. There's the amendment from the Bloc, and then there's the sub-amendment to that amendment from the Conservatives. So it'll be a vote on the Conservatives sub-amendment, then it'll be a vote on the Bloc amendment, and then it would be a vote on the budget. And I don't think that would all happen in one day, but we can see what happens. I'm assuming it won't all happen in one day. And this timer here of 28 minutes is just letting people know that, are they ready to vote? And as long as people all come together, this won't take more than 5 minutes. It won't be 28 minutes. But in the meantime, there's nothing to tune into because all the committees are going to suspend right now. In fact, OGGO just adjourned. They didn't even bother to suspend. Let's see the other committees. One of the other committees is still running right now. And so is... and then HUMA just suspended. So it looks like we're just waiting for the Foreign Affairs Committee to hear the bells and suspend. And once everybody's either at least made their way to the House or accepted and acknowledged the fact that there's a vote being done on their app, because they can just vote from the app on their phone, once everybody's acknowledged, then the vote will actually start to proceed. So we are just waiting. We've also already heard from the NDP interim leader saying that he won't support this. Let's go pull up that clip real quick just so we can all be on the same page.
What about tomorrow? What about that block?
We're still studying that motion, but the one today we're definitely voting against. Amendment? Yeah. Well, we're not supporting.
Is the government going to fall, or is the government going to live?
Vote today?
Yeah.
Yes, on the vote today.
Conservative amendment?
Yeah.
Well, we're not supporting it.
No. What about tomorrow? What about that block?
We're still studying that motion, but the one today we're definitely voting against.
What in
because the Conservatives want, massive cuts to public spending. That's exactly the opposite direction that we Democrats think we need to go in, which is investing in Canadian economy at this point. So there's absolutely no way we're going to support the Conservative motion today.
So all 7 of your members vote against the Conservative motion, but in the NDP or in the Bloc motion, increases to health care and pension supports. Do you guys support that? Will you vote for it?
Well, we're still studying that motion as well. So,
what do you object to it? Is there anything in there objectionable?
Well, we're still debating that in our caucus, but we're taking them one motion at a time. It's interesting that the Conservatives were asleep at the switch and allowed the Bloc to get the amendment in before they did. I think that speaks to the disarray in the Conservative Party right now. But, we had a discussion about the vote today, and we decided we're going to vote no, and we'll have a discussion tomorrow about the Bloc motion after we discuss.
Everybody's showing up today to vote?
Everybody's showing up.
Are you worried about the government falling?
Well, that's always a concern. I mean, that's the implication of any vote, but that's not our prime consideration. We analyze the motion on its merits, and the Conservative motion is a Ronald Reagan, Maggie Thatcher, rip government to shreds motion. Calling for a $42 billion deficit when it's $78 billion. That means there's $36 billion of additional cuts that they would want to see out of this government. Can you imagine what that would do to services and Canadians across this country? So we're voting against the Conservative motion because it's absolutely irresponsible. It's extremely right-wing, and it's not the direction that the country should be going.
What about the main motion? What about the budget? Have you made a decision yet?
We're still waiting.
Because you're a BC MP, do you have any thoughts on the Supreme Court dismissing the appeal from Universal Ostrich Farms and the ostriches aren't going ahead to be called?
No, I have no view. I haven't read the decision.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
No view on the ostrich being called. What a weak person. What a weak individual. Okay, so they are still on vote call right now. Dun, 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 dun. See if there's anything else in the meantime we can tune into. Obviously, all the houses, all the committees and everything is suspended. Well, it looks like MPs commented on the ostrich situation as well. Let's hear that.
Champagne, how confident are you you'll get the votes to pass your budget?
Well, I was on the road, and Canadian wants to see this budget going forward. I mean, trust me, come in the airport with me. People were stopping me around the line, say, go, we need this budget to go forward, because, it's an investment budget, but it's a budget made for Canadians, and that's what I would invite any member of the opposition, go in the street, talk to people, and you'll see what they tell you. They said, listen, we see the critical investment in infrastructure. We've seen the investment you're going to do in housing, in productivity. I was just with a group of young people this morning. They are hopeful for Canada, and I'm confident in Canada. So I think this is a vote for Canadians.
What does it tell you about the Conservatives waiting so long to table their amendment? They have now a sub-amendment, not an amendment.
they have a lot of soul searching to do, because if you go in the street like I did and talk to people, they tell you they saw that budget, they understand we face some headwind, they understand that we have the fiscal capacity, they understand that these are generational investments that are needed to put our country forward, and they're grateful that, you know, at the same time we're spending less, we keep investing in our nation and our future, because it's the future of our kids, our grandkids that we're talking about. So I would say for those who have to make that vote today, they should reflect. Do a bit soul searching.
Why are you cutting the study permits by so dramatically? We haven't gotten an explanation. Why? Why the big change?
Well, what we're doing first is to bring back the immigration level to something which is more sustainable, because I think we have realized and Canadians have realized that, you know, if you welcome people in our country, they need to be able to find a home. They need to be able to certainly send their kids to school, go to the hospital if they need to. So we needed to bring back the level to more sustainable level. But at the same time, we're doing a record investment, more than $1 billion, to attract the best and brightest mind in the world to come here, work in our research center, be in our universities, and grow the economy. So you'd appreciate it. I have to go to the question period, but I'll see you in a minute. Question aujourd'hui.
In spite of all the posturing that's happening in front of you, that people recognize deep down that they will be punished for forcing a Christmas election. But they won't admit it to you, but I have absolutely no doubt that's what they're hearing. So I think it'll happen. I don't know how it'll happen.
The case not proceeding to the Supreme Court, and whether the ostriches should end their lives.
Look, we obviously are pleased to see the decision of the Supreme Court. It's important that the Minister of Agriculture and CFIA are able to protect the health of the general Canadian public and of the food that we consume in the poultry industry as well. This is a decision that is following the science and evidence, and I'm sure my colleague who has conduct of file will have more to say today. Thanks so much.
It's not being consumed. We're not eating the ostriches, you daft buffoon. Oh my God.
Obviously, I'm going there more to work on nature, oceans issue, but as you know, Canada played a leading role at COP15 to help the world agreed to protect 30% of our oceans and lands by 2030. So it's an important meeting to go and meet with some colleagues and stakeholders to see how we can continue advancing this important work, both domestically and internationally.
Is it easy enough to keep this work going, given the sovereignty issues?
Ostriches.
I mean, the priority, I've been working will be coming up soon. I think that you and your colleagues will see that.
Something that you're really hoping to have happen. You know how the Sherpas get together and they work on something, a deliverable at the end of the COP conference this time. Is there something specific that you're looking forward to finally, you know?
I think the reason. It was a very deliberate reason that the Brazilian government decided to hold a COP there in Belém. It's very close to the Amazon. I think they want to. I think if we can achieve. Yesterday, I said that we.
Online regulator specifically.
Well, you asked me about online harms, and I told you that we were.
Nobody
this
asked
is a very
Sam
active
about,
discussion.
He would be the most climate activist, animal-hugging, friendly tree hugger that you would want to ask about the ostriches, and nobody asked him a question on that?
There's been some election fines leveled on Mr. Batiste for his election. I mean, I'm just asking you because you're the guy next door in Cape Breton. There's only two of you.
There's two.
What do you make of Mr. Batiste and his agent getting...
Honestly, I haven't read the story. I don't know much about it. I know Jaime's a stand-up guy. So
the rules.
It is.
Is it clear? Is it hard? I'm not an accountant. I've never been a
honestly, I can tell you my first time running and my second time running and my third time running. It's one of those things that you have to have a strong.
Let me see if any other. Is there a transcript on this? No, there's no transcript yet. YouTube hasn't. Sometimes you can just find it in the transcript, like ostrich.
Team around you to ensure that everything is taken care of. So it's usually helpful to have a lawyer on your team, an accountant on your team, people that maybe have done this before on your team as well. And I know with respect to my team, we're constantly evolving what we need from election to election. And so we have, an accountant and access to a lawyer who's great for us. So yeah, it's important to have folks because it's easy to miss a deadline, and it's easy sometimes to make a mistake.
We heard everybody else on that. Okay, so that's it for that clip. Let's check the House again. They're still on vote call. Come on, waddle your fat butts over there. Get yourselves to your seat, and if you're not going to sit, just vote on your phone. Not that difficult. Oh, I can probably show you some of the, let me see the correspondence between Rick Perkins and Chris. He leaked the texts a few days ago on Twitter. I'm trying to find it. Did he delete the tweet? It looks like he deleted the tweet. Because, yeah, he had a whole bunch of texts between him and Chris was basically saying how if he ran as Conservative again, he wouldn't win his riding. He says he's got no chance, and I can't seem to find those texts. It looks like he deleted that tweet. Yeah, strange. Oh, we can look at this. This is Cooper's tweet in the meantime while we're waiting. I know this is hard to read. I might be able to make this bigger here. There we go. This is Brookfield's response to the ethics committee when they were asked to be summoned. And as you can see, Mr. Brassard here, so this is dated November 4th. This was 2 days ago. After they were told they had to come, they were summoned by Parliament. You can see here, as previously stated, we stand ready to assist the committee in ways that are most appropriate regarding the Conflict of Interest Act to support the committee's study, and with most informed testimony, we believe that the committee would benefit most from hearing directly from Justin B. Beber, Chief Operating Officer and member of Executive Committee. Member of the Executive Committee of Brookfield. So he's the COO. He's not the CEO. In his role, Mr. Beber has primary oversight of Brookfield, blah, 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 blah. And basically, he is available to appear before the committee within your proposed timeline. Due to the nature of the roles of Mr. Flatt and Mr. Teskey, Mr. Flatt is the actual CEO. They are less qualified than Mr. Beber to assist the committee with the subject matter. So I'm not sure how the COO is better to assist than the CEO, but that's what they're alleging. In addition, they each permanently reside out of Canada and due to the significant pre-existing travel and business commitments are unable to appear before the committee between now and year end. That's what I was alluding to when I was making hypotheticals earlier, when they said they denied, but we didn't know for exact what reason. It's because they do reside outside of Canada. And so I believe that's why the ethics committee finally went and got legal advice, because how are we going to summon somebody who doesn't reside in Canada? Even if they are a Canadian citizen, there's the logistical issue of, do we issue a warrant and then try and get them to be extradited? Is it really something that's that serious? You know what I mean? So I just think this is bogus. You're alluding that you can't come as the CEO, but you'll send your next right-hand man, and that, oh, he's better than me. Well, then why isn't he the CEO? And we don't care. We didn't summon him. We summoned you. So, yeah, and then they just go on to say that they're a private sector company and we do not possess expertise and regulatory framework regarding governments or public officials, nor does Brookfield act as a trustee or administrator to blind trusts for public office holders. So, just a bunch of bogus from them on that. Now let's go back to the House. Let's see if we can close this. They are still making their way over. This might actually run the whole 30-minute timer, and then in that case, all the committees won't have time to come back and do anything. So it looks like whatever we got from the committees before this vote is that's it. Yeah, actually, all the other committees adjourned. They've all adjourned except for Justice. Justice is the only committee that may come back after this vote. But every other committee just adjourned. They said they want to send Justin Bieber. I know. Beber, I think. Did I say Bieber? I might have said Bieber because it's very close, very similar spelling there. Let's see if there's anything else we can watch while we're waiting. Because, yeah, this is probably going to run down the 14-minute clock, but I'll be watching just in case. Bum, ba, da, da. You're wondering how long the guy lived there? You mean how long has the Brookfield CEO lived abroad? Because they didn't actually say where he's lived abroad. They just said that he doesn't reside in Canada. I think New York. Yeah, probably in New York. I would assume so. Since that's where they moved their head office. Now, there's nothing to really tune into in the meantime. I mean, I guess we can check in with the ostrich situation, because that's been a big topic for today. But I don't think there's anything more that we're going to hear on video that we haven't already heard on Twitter or anything. Okay, I did say Bever. Okay. I didn't incorrectly read it. That's good. That's good. Yeah, there's no real other updates to be checked in on. Yeah, they're being called today. Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying is I'm trying to see if it's actually being done, but from what I can see, yeah. Hold on, let me check this. Let's check what Rebel News had to say about this. Oh, what the hell? Make sure
high path disease. Just testing for an H doesn't make a virus. The only time you found out what the true virus was when it went to the lab in Winnipeg. When they did that test in Winnipeg, it was a hybrid, which meant that it was not a high path. And yet they've said we've had a high path disease here from day one. It's not high path, and they know it. When we got going, when we realized that we had the problem, we got the problem solved. The last bird died middle of January, and we had offered all the science that we have. We gave them our business plan that showed what we can do and what we have done with the antibodies. They had all of that information. Dr. Tsukamoto from Japan offered to the Canadian government at that time his whole stockpile of H5N1 antibodies, and he has a lot. He's had them for quite a few years. Silence. They decided before January that they were going to take us out. They haven't done it yet, but it's very, very close now. Yeah, and there's other things that are happening behind the scene that I can't discuss right at this time of what's happened out there to our disadvantage.
Empire eugenics, it's coming.
What's that?
Empire eugenics, it's coming.
That's right.
My life just abruptly stopped, but after it did, he said the real issue is that the antibodies are about to die. That's what's at stake here, in addition to the flock. We're going to go back over here to Katie. You can see some of the mainstream media is here coming in. I imagine there'll be more. In case you missed the other live, if you go to there, Rebel News was in the house when the farmers received the message. I pulled it up, gave them the Supreme Court's decision. Here's Katie doing an interview, but you can find that at savetheostriches.com.
I don't know.
And that's totally wrong, and people better wake up to that fact.
They are cooling.
Hey, Jeff. Karen here too? Not yet. We have no idea. Stop right back here.
Thank you.
Out here on the very edge
Can I have your...
People all across the world that have fell in love with these animals as beacons of hope that there still was good in the world. Our government has made a decision that we'll never ever come back from. This is the worst mistake in Canadian history. This has been a fight for 11 months, and a fight for 11 months for life versus death. This has not been about breaking laws or setting a dangerous precedent. Canadian Food Inspection Agency has set the most dangerous precedents today, and that is that our voices don't matter.
Do you have any other legal options? Like, what are your options for now?
We're waiting to hear from Omar, our lawyer. I'll let you know about that. But I promise you, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has just given us so much more fight to fight for every farmer out there, because under our watch, we will never, ever let another farmer go through this. And I know that the world isn't going to either. Out there, we have over 300 lives, heartbeats that'll never come back. We remember that Canadian Food Inspection Agency today is playing God. And nobody has the right to play God. And that's what they've been doing for decades. They've been playing God.
You have dozens of people who came to the farm in the last 11 months. Like, what does it mean to the whole community that was gathered here?
It's pain. This is pain. People gathered here with unity and hope, restoring faith in the Canadians, of the justice system that has failed so many people. And this is another fail. Animals deserve the right to live. They definitely deserve the right to be tested before they're eradicated and killed with inhumane actions like foaming and smothering and shutting off their airflow. This is wrong. These animals that are out behind us, they have been alive for 35 years. Could you imagine just killing your aunt or your uncle or your child because they were sick almost a year ago? They haven't been tested, and we need to remember that animals are being killed every day based off suspicion, off an agency that's gone rogue and has too much power. You know, shame on you, Heath MacDonald, our agricultural minister, for never reaching out to us, never setting foot on this farm. Shame on our government for not stepping up. Our true leaders, where are our true leadership in Canada? They have failed us. Our true leaders in Canada have failed us.
What is going to happen now? Like, you cannot really see what's inside the farmer now, but what do you think is going to happen and when?
Pain, traumatized animals, terrorizing animals, killing. It's murdering healthy animals that have been 35 years on this planet. They are prehistoric animals that have survived millions of years, but they won't survive the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. There's a problem. We are surrounded by the most loving people, and we've been surrounded by thousands of people that continue to keep wanting to fight for justice, and it isn't over yet. Canadian Food Inspection Agency, you can stop. Be the heroes that everybody deserves.
Yeah, a little ridiculous. Absolutely garbage situation. 4 minutes. We'll just wait it out for the 4 minutes. I kind of want to grab some more water. And there's nothing really else to tune into. We've kind of gotten all the updates for today. As I said, all the committees are suspended. It does seem like Justice Committee is going to come back after the vote. But we're not 100% sure. I wonder if she spoke out for the thousands of turkeys and chickens that have faced the same. She did. She did mention that. She's mentioned it quite a few times, that it's not just her ostriches, that there's other situations. It's just obviously more pertaining to her because it's personal and it's happening on her property. So, yeah, we got 3 minutes. I'm going to grab some water. We'll be right back. We're just going to stick around and see how this goes. Okay, perfect timing. Well, they actually all decided to go back to Parliament. Let's turn this up. It's a bit quiet.
The question is on the sub-amendment. The question is as follows. Mr. Champagne, seconded by Mr. Carney, moved that this House approve in general the budgetary policy of the government. Amendment, Mr. Blanchet, seconded by Mr. Perron, propose l'amendement suivant, que la motion...
Move the following amendment. Shall I dispense? No. Moved the following amendment that the motion be amended by deleting all the words after the word that and substituting the following. The House reject the government's budget statement, which will hurt Quebec because it fails to A, raise the Canadian health transfer escalator to 6%. Shall I dispense?
You know, it's pretty clear.
B, end discrimination against people aged 65 to 74 who did not receive an equitable increase in old age security.
C, de rembourser les 800...
C, repay the $814 million to Quebecers who were not compensated for the end of carbon pricing in April 2025. And D, propose concrete and effective measures to combat climate change.
Land, seconded by Mr. Moore, moved the following sub-amendment, that the amendment be amended by deleting all the words after the words, quote, the government's budget statement, end quote, and substituting the following, quote, since instead of presenting an affordable budget so Canadians can have an affordable life, it presented a budget that fails to A, consider that every dollar the Liberal government spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians in the form of higher taxes and inflation. B, bring down the deficit to the level Liberals promised in their last fiscal update, which promised $42 billion last year. C, scrap hidden taxes on food, including the industrial carbon tax on farmers, the food packaging tax that adds billions in costs, and the fuel standard tax that adds 17 cents per litre to diesel and gasoline for farmers. D, end the inflation tax by bringing down the cost of government instead of printing money to pay Liberal bills. And E, include a plan for any oil and gas pipelines that would strengthen our nation's economy and get our resources to market, end quote. The 10-minute period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favor of the sub-amendment will please rise.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Schmale.
Mr. Brock.
Mr. Brock.
Mrs. Block.
Mrs. Block.
Ms. Landsman.
Ms. Landsman.
Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Lake.
Mr. Caputo.
Mr. Caputo.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Small.
Mr. Mazer.
Mr. Mazer.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. Jenis.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Berthold.
Mr. Workington.
Mr. Workington.
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman.
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman.
Mrs. Roberts.
Mrs. Roberts.
Mr. Ross.
Mr. Ross.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Généreux.
Mr. Généreux.
Mr. Viss.
Mr. Viss.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Baldinelli.
Mr. Calkins.
Mr. Calkins.
Mr. Redicop.
Mr. Redicop.
Mr. Muse.
Mr. Muse.
Ms. Rude.
Ms. Rude.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Tolmie.
Mr. Tolmie.
Monsieur Mallette, Kapuskasing, Timmins, Muskegawak.
Mr. Mallet. Mr. Mallet. Kapuskasing, Timiskin, Timiskawak.
Monsieur Lefebvre.
Mr. Lefebvre.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Arnold.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed.
Mr. Epp.
Mr. Epp.
Mr. Diot.
Mr. Diot.
Mr. Menegakis.
Mr. Menegakis.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Jensen.
Mrs. Jansen.
Mr. Abultaif.
Mr. Abutayev.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Patzer.
Mr. Patzer.
Mr. Giovanni.
Mr. Giovanni.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Mrs. Anstey.
Mrs. Anstey.
Mr. Au.
Mr. Au.
Mr. Babber.
Mr. Babber.
Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Bélanger, Sudbury Est, Manitoulin, Nickelbelt.
Mr. Bélanger, Sudbury Est, Manitoulin, Nickelbelt.
Mr. Bexty.
Mr. Bexty.
Mr. Bonk.
Mr. Bonk.
Mrs. Borelli.
Mrs. Borelli.
Miss Cobenia.
Miss Cobenia.
Mrs. Cody.
Mrs. Cody.
Mr. Davies, Niagara South.
Mr. Davies, Niagara South.
Mrs. DeRitter.
Mrs. DeRitter.
Mr. Gill, Brampton West.
I don't think
Mr.
Blocker in
Gil,
favor
Brampton
of this.
Mr.
We know
Gill,
the
Windsor
NDP
West.
so
Mr. Gill,
this
Windsor
will
West.
likely fail.
Mr. Kimmich.
Mr. Kimmich.
Mr. Holman.
Mr. Holman.
Mr. Kibble.
Mr. Kibble.
Mrs. Conans.
Mrs. Conan.
Ms. Cronus.
Ms. Cronus.
Mr. Lawton.
Mr. Lawton.
Mr. Ma.
Mr. Ma.
Mr. Mahal.
Mr. Mahal.
Mr. Mantle.
Mr. Mantle.
Mr. Mackenzie.
Mr. Mackenzie.
Mr. Strauss.
And Mr. Strauss.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent au
All those opposed to the sub-amendment will please rise.
Carney.
Mr. Carney.
Mr. Ali. Madam Diaz. Mr. McDonald-Maltec. Mr. McGinty. Mr. Lightbound. Mr. Robertson. Ms. DeBruson.
Mr. Bruson.
Mr. Leblanc.
Mr. Leblanc.
Madame Jolie.
Madame Jolie.
Mr. McKinnon Gatineau.
Mr. McKinnon Gatineau.
Mr. Champagne.
Mr. Champagne.
Ms. Thompson.
Thompson.
Mr. Hodgson.
Hodgson.
Mr. Ananda Sangari.
Fernanda Sangari.
Ms. Haidu.
Miss Haidu.
Madame Michel.
Madame Michel.
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Mr. Guibault.
Mr. Fraser.
Fraser.
Mr. Cedar Brampton East.
Mr. Cedar Brampton East.
Yeah, the
Ms.
NDP are gonna
Olszewski.
stand
Olszewski.
and
Mr. Solomon.
Mr. Solomon.
Mrs. Valdez.
Mrs. Valdez.
Monsieur Duclos.
Mr.
this will
Duclos.
pass.
Mr. Hussein.
Mr. Hussein.
Ms. Gould.
Ms. Gould.
Madame Petitpas-Taylor.
Madame Petitpas-Taylor.
Mr. Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Ms. Chagger.
Ms. Chagger.
Mr. Osborne.
Osborne.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
Mr. Fragiscato.
Mr. Fuhr.
Mr. Fuhr.
Mr. Vancouverden.
Mr. Vancouverden.
Ms. Gainey.
Ms. Gainey.
Madame Provost.
Provo.
Ms. Sahota.
Sahota.
Mr. Belanger, Desnete, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Mr. Belanger. Descendesi, Mississippi. Churchill River.
Ms. McKnight.
Ms. McKnight.
Ms. Chartrand.
Ms. Chartrand.
Mr. Garrettson.
Mr. Garrettson.
Ms. Anand.
Ms. Anand.
Ms. Alty.
Ms. Alty.
Ms. Gulmasty.
Mrs. Gulmasty.
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Sarai.
Ms. McLean, Esquimalt Sandwich Souk.
Ms. McLean. Esquimalt Sandwich Soup.
Mr. Long.
Mr. Long.
Mr. Zaracelli.
Mr. Zaracelli.
Madame Chanette.
Madame Chanette.
Ms. Latanzio.
Ms. Latanzio.
Mr. Nakvi.
Mr. Nakfi.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Madame Minah.
Madame Minah.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller.
Ms. Jasic.
Ms. Jazik.
Mr. Beach.
Mr. Beach.
Ms. Scroll.
Ms. Scroll.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Dollywall.
Mr. Dollywall.
Madame Chattel.
Madame Chattel.
Mrs. Romanato.
Mrs. Romanato.
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Assassi.
Mr. Sassy.
Mr. Grant.
Mr. Grant.
Mr. Letao.
Mr. Leiteo.
Mr. Bardizzi.
Mr. Bardizzi.
Madame Kayabaga.
Madame Kayabaga.
Mr. Lamuter.
Mr. Lamuter.
Madame Brière.
Madame Brière.
Mr. Turnbull.
Mr. Turnbull.
Mr. Kellaway.
Mr. Kellaway.
Monsieur Gay.
Monsieur Gay.
Mr. Hogan.
Mr. Hogan.
Monsieur Ramsey.
Monsieur Ramsey.
Ms. Chi.
Ms. Chi.
Mr. Miles.
Mr. Miles.
Mr. Biddle.
Mr. Biddle.
Ms. Dillon.
Ms. Dillon.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Ms. Zerowitz.
Monsieur El Khoury.
Monsieur El Khoury.
Monsieur Fergus.
Monsieur Fergus.
Mr. Fonseca.
Mr. Fonseca.
Monsieur Iacono.
Monsieur Iacono.
Ms. Khalid.
Ms. Khalid.
Monsieur Lauzon.
Monsieur Lauzon.
Mr. Maloney.
Mr. Maloney.
Ms. Suds.
Ms. Suds.
Madame Desrochers.
Madame Desrochers.
Ms. McKelvey.
Miss McKelvey.
Mr. Gasparo.
Mr. Gasparo.
Mr. Hanley.
Mr. Hanley.
Madame Rochefort.
Madame Rochefort.
Mr. Casey.
Mr. Casey.
Mr. Blois.
Mr. Blois.
Madame Bendayan.
Madame Bendayan.
Madame Fortier.
Madame Fortier.
Mr. Oliphant.
Mr. Oliphant.
Mr. Baptiste.
Mr. Baptiste.
Mr. Clausen.
Mr. Clausen.
Madame Lavac.
Madame Lavac.
Madame Koutrakis.
Madame Koutrakis.
Miss Church.
Miss Church.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Mr. McKinnon, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Shifke.
Monsieur Shifke.
Mr. Sheehan.
Mr. Sheehan.
Miss Sidhu, Brampton South.
Miss Cedar Brampton South.
Ms. Vandenbeld.
Miss Vandenbelt.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mrs. Zaid.
Ms. Yip.
Miss Yip.
Mr. Baker.
Mr. Baker.
Mr. D'Entremont.
Mr. D'Entremont.
Madame Lalonde.
Madame Lalonde.
Mr. Pulowski.
Mr. Pulowski.
Mr. Weiler.
Mr. Weiler.
Monsieur Zuberi.
Monsieur Zuberi.
Mr. Eolfson.
Mr. Eolfson.
Madame Lapointe, Rivière de Mille-Îles.
Madame Lapointe, Rivière de Mille-Îles.
Mr. Baines.
Mr. Baines.
Mr. Cotto.
Mr. Cotto.
Mr. Gahir.
Mr. Gahir.
Miss Hefner.
Miss Hefner.
Madame Lapointe, Sudbury.
Madame Lapointe, Sudbury.
Mr. Souza.
Mr. Souza.
Mr. Carr.
Mr. Carr.
Ms. Khan.
Mr. Khan.
Mr. Al Saoud.
Mr. El Saoud.
Madame Auguste.
Madame Auguste.
Mr. Chang.
Mr. Chang.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Connors.
Mr. Connors.
Madame Dandurand.
Madame Dandurand.
Mr. Danko.
Mr. Danko.
Mr. Deschaines-Thériault.
Mr. Deschaines-Thériault.
Mr. Earl.
Mr. Earl.
Ms. Fancy.
Miss Fancy.
Mr. Fanjoy.
Mr. Fanjoy.
Ms. Harrison.
Miss Harrison.
Ms. Hurdle.
Miss Hurdle.
Mr. Joseph.
Mr. Joseph.
Mr. Lavoie.
Mr. Lavoie.
Mr. McDonald Cardigan.
Mr. McDonald Cardigan.
Mr. Mallet Bay of Quinty.
Mr. Millet Bay of Quinty.
Ms. Miedema.
Miss Miedema.
Madame Mingarelli.
Madame Mingarelli.
Ms. Nathan.
Miss Nathan.
Ms. Wien.
Ms. Wien.
Mr. Tumba.
Mr. Tumba.
Ms. O'Rourke.
Ms. O'Rourke.
Mr. Rana.
Mr. Rana.
Ms. Royer.
Ms. Royer.
Mr. Saini.
Mr. Saini.
Mr. Sari.
Mr. Sari.
Mr. Sawatsky.
Mr. Sawatsky.
Ms. Sodi.
Ms. Sodi.
Mr. St. Pierre.
Mr. St. Pierre.
Ms. Tesser Dirksen.
Tessa Dirksen.
Mr. Villeneuve.
Mr. Villeneuve.
Mr. Watchhorn.
Monsieur Watchhorn.
Monsieur Garon.
Monsieur Garon.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Fortin.
Monsieur Perron.
Monsieur Perron.
Madame Gill, Côte-Nord, Kawashkamak, Nitassinan. Madame Larouche. Madame Godreau. Monsieur Beaulieu.
Of course,
Monsieur
the bloc voted
Barsalou-Duval.
against. No surprise there. So that
Ms.
gives them
May.
enough votes right there.
Ms. May.
La Chambre attendra maintenant.
The House will now wait for the electronic voting period to end before resuming its proceedings.
I got 2 minutes. Should be, what? Am I doing the math right? 144 to like 190 something. So this won't pass. The question really is, are the Bloc going to put forward a sub-amendment to the Bloc's amendment? And if the Bloc don't get their amendment, are they going to vote no on the budget? I would assume that's how that would work. If the Bloc's amendment doesn't pass, they're going to say no to the budget. That puts Cons and Bloc on the same team. And then it's just a question of what are the NDP going to do? Because the NDP will probably put forward an amendment to the budget, or they might just abstain altogether because they said that would be something that they've considered as well, as some MPs may abstain. They're not going to force all of their MPs to vote one way on the budget. They will on the amendments, but not on the actual budget. You're so confused. Okay, so what's happening right now is there's the budget that was tabled. There was an amendment by the Bloc, and then the Conservatives made a sub-amendment to that. And so we're voting on the sub-amendment from the Conservatives. I think that's the play. Once the Bloc doesn't get their amendment, they will vote no. Exactly. Yeah, Liberals are going to say no to this because they don't want the amendments by the Conservatives. This vote is on the sub-amendment to the budget. Yes, everybody's going to vote no besides the Conservatives, because that's the only party that's going to want things like Bill C-69 taken off, reduce the deficit, etc. So every other party has a opposite stance on that. Like Bloc are asking for more healthcare transfers. They want more money, basically. NDP don't think the deficit's large enough. They actually want a bigger deficit. So Conservatives are really the only party asking for the deficit to be reduced. So that goes against what the other parties are standing for, so they hit no. Which is what we anticipated. We knew this was going to happen. They already spoke about it before this vote. Oh, sorry. Music's a bit loud there. There we go. Music's done.
I wish to inform the House that the electronic voting period
Yes,
has
that's
ended.
what I was saying, Josh.
To vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raised hand function, and the chair will recognize them. I don't see any hands raised. The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 139, 139. Nays contre 198, 198.
I declare the sub-amendment defeated.
Okay, so defeated. I saw that. I've got something on the oven, so I couldn't deal with that. So they're not going to vote to the Bloc's amendment right now. That was just the sub-amendment. I believe the Bloc's motion still needs to be studied.
Order. An ordre. We will be proceeding to private members' business momentarily, so I just ask members to either take their seats or take their conversations elsewhere so we can proceed to private members' business.
So yeah, we knew that's how that vote was going to go. Very, very much anticipated. The on oven on top of it, the burners. I'm just cooking some food. So we've been live streaming for a while. Just this has been 2.5 hours. Before that, we were in question period. So it's been about 4.5 hours since I've had something to eat last. So I was just cooking some food. That's why I kept going back and forth. But again, we already knew how this was going to go down, so this isn't anything surprising.
Order! An ordre! Again, I'll ask colleagues to please take their conversations behind the curtains or into the lobbies.
Maybe tomorrow the Bloc amendment will be voted on. The House doesn't have its agenda for tomorrow yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets voted on tomorrow. But we already know how that's going to go. Liberals are probably going to vote against that. Same with NDP. And then ideally, Bloc vote against the actual budget itself because they don't like what's there. Same with the Conservatives. And then we're just waiting on the NDP to decide what they're going to do. Can you please explain what the vote was for? I explained it multiple times. I'll explain it again. There's the budget that was tabled. A amendment was brought forward by the Bloc for that, and then there's a sub-amendment brought forward by the Conservatives. So we were just voting on the Conservatives' sub-amendment, which was voted against by every other party but the Conservatives. So that's how that worked. Now we still have to vote on the Bloc amendment itself, which won't be voted on today. Looks like that'll be voted on tomorrow, or not next week because they're off next week, but the week after, which would be November the 17th that week. Is this live? Yes, this is live. We've already covered the vote now. All the other committees have adjourned at this point. The only one that's left is the Justice Committee. NDP is apparently in favor of the budget. Well, they haven't said whether or not... They haven't said whether or not they're going to vote in favor or off favor of the budget. They're probably going to bring forward some amendments. Are we going back to just? I don't think so. There's only about half an hour left of it, and by the time they walk over from this area back to Justice Committee, there's only going to be like 20 minutes left of Justice Committee, and they're just going to be going back and forth on those amendments that they were bringing forth. So I don't really want to listen to those semantic knickknacks between the two parties on that. But yeah, so we won't be live tomorrow. We're never live on Fridays. We will be live on November the 17th. That's when the House comes back, and that'll be a busy week because that's when the actual budget itself gets voted on, which is, again, the bigger teller, not the amendments or the sub-amendments. The actual budget itself is the big non-confidence vote teller. So we're going to call it here. Like I said, I was cooking some stuff, so I've got some things to do. It's also quite late for me, too, so I'm not going to sit around and watch the last little hour that's in the House or the last little half hour of the committee, which is the only committee that's left on today. It's the Justice one, so we'll call it here. And I will see you guys November 17th. I know that's feels like a while away, but we'll get there. Thank you so much, Gordon, for the 10 gifted. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Megan, for the 1. Wanda Hall, thank you so much for the super chat. And thank you, Iris, for being a member for 12 months. That is so awesome. Thank you, guys. But yeah, I will see you guys in just a little over a week. And everybody have a great evening. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. And if you didn't catch some of the stuff from the committee, I'll go ahead and put some clips out on the channel from some of the good parts. And I will see you guys later. Cheers, guys.